99% of women after 70 don't know that. I'm 86 years old. And do you know what still makes me shake my head? It's how so many people think love has an expiration date. That after 70, desire dries up, Macy disappears, and passion politely walks out the door. Well, that's nonsense. And I should know, I've lived it. I've seen friends slowly give up on themselves. Beautiful women who stopped wearing perfume, vibrant men who once brought flowers home for no reason now stare blankly at TV screens. Not because love left them, but because they stopped showing up for it. Let me tell you something. Passion doesn't die with age, it fades with neglect. If you think there's no room for steamy kisses, heart-pounding excitement, or long, soul-deep conversations once the gray hairs come in, then you're missing the best chapter of the book. I'm here to tell you, as someone who's walked through grief, rekindled love, and danced barefoot in the kitchen at 2 a.m., that love isn't over after 70. In fact, if you do it right, it gets better, richer, realer. And in the story I'm about to share, I'll show you how we brought passion back, not by chasing youth, but by choosing love over and over again. Because as long as you're breathing, it's never too late to feel deeply, laugh fully, and yes, love fiercely. Before we get started, I'd love it if you'd give this video a like. It helps me keep sharing important lessons. If you're not already subscribed, I encourage you to hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications so you don't miss out on new videos. Also, if you like this video, write a 1 in the comments and a 0 if you don't, so I know what can be improved. So, here we go. 1. I stopped waiting and made the first move. It was a quiet Thursday afternoon. The kind where the clock ticks louder than usual, and the sunlight pours in just right through the curtains. He was sitting in his armchair, half listening to the news, half lost in his thoughts. I was folding laundry, moving slowly, not from pain, but from habit. We'd become polite strangers in our own home. Not unkind. Not distant. Just settled. And not in a good way. There was love, yes. But passion. That had been packed away with the photo albums. Present, but untouched. Then I saw it. Tucked between 2 cookbooks on the shelf. An old cassette tape. Our Songs. 1963. My heart stuttered. That tape had lived through college dances, honeymoon nights, and long road trips with windows down and hands intertwined. I held it like a relic and walked over to the ancient cassette player we hadn't touched in years. I dusted it off, pushed in the tape, and hit play. The room filled with the soft, crackling intro of Unchained Melody. It felt like a whisper from another life. I walked into the living room, stood there in silence, and looked at him, really looked at him. Not as the man who now misplaced his glasses or forgot where he parked, but as the man who once lifted me off my feet under the stars. He looked up from the newspaper, surprised. I smiled, that same playful grin I used to give him when we were dating. No words. Just that look. He stared at me for a second, confused, then softened. Slowly, he stood. His body a little more hesitant now, but his eyes. Oh, his eyes remembered. He took my hand, and we swayed. No choreography, just memory and music. My cheek against his chest, his hand resting gently on my back. It wasn't just a dance. It was a decision. A decision to stop waiting for time to fix what only intention could. That night, we didn't just fall into bed. We fell back into each other. And I learned something I'll never forget. Passion doesn't leave us, we leave it. But if we're brave enough, we can always go back and find it waiting. 2. We started talking about our desires. After that night, something shifted. We didn't talk about it right away. Not with words. But the silence between us changed. It was no longer heavy. No longer filled with, what happened to us? Instead, it held something lighter. Curious. A little daring. A few days later, while we were cleaning out the whole closet, an old yearly tradition that neither of us truly enjoyed, he pulled out a shoebox. Inside were faded letters I'd written to him when he was stationed overseas. He laughed, reading one aloud, something cheeky I'd said about what I'd do to him when he got home. I felt my face flush. "I forgot you used to talk like that," he said, smiling. "So did I replied. Maybe we both stopped saying things that mattered. That night, over tea, we started talking. Really talking. Not about the news or doctor's appointments. Not about what needed fixing around the house. But about us. I asked him, "What do you miss?" He was quiet for a moment, then looked at me with a softness I hadn't seen in years. "I miss the way you used to trace circles on my arm when we watched movies. I miss the way you'd whisper things in the dark, just for me." I took his hand. "I miss being touched like I was still desired. I miss being seen." That conversation opened a door we didn't even realize had been closed. Over the following weeks, we talked more, sometimes over wine, sometimes while brushing our teeth. Little confessions spilled out in comfortable bits. "I've always wanted to try." Or "Remember when we used to." Desire returned not as something wild or urgent, but as something intentional. Mate. Safe. We learned that the loss of passion wasn't about age, it was about silence. About assuming the other person had stopped wanting. But we hadn't. We just stopped asking. And even worse, stopped telling. Now, every time we talk openly, about needs, memories, fantasies, fears, we grow closer. Desire doesn't fade with age. It fades with disconnection. And sometimes, all it takes is one honest conversation to bring it roaring back. 3. Passion is a choice. Here's something I've come to believe with my whole heart. Passion isn't something that just happens. It's not some magical spark that floats around, waiting to land on lucky people. It's a choice. A daily one. When we were younger, it felt effortless. A glance, a touch, a private joke whispered during dinner. We didn't think about passion, we lived it. But somewhere along the way, the world got louder. Children, work, responsibilities. We began to love each other in practical ways, through bills paid, meals cooked, favors done. And though that love was real, it didn't always feel alive. So we made a new promise, to choose passion again. And it started small. I began leaving him handwritten notes beside his morning coffee, just a sentence or two. "Still thinking about last Thursday night?" Or, "You looked extra handsome in that blue shirt yesterday." At first, he chuckled, thinking I was being silly. But then he started leaving notes for me too, sometimes tucked under my pillow, sometimes taped to the bathroom mirror. Little things like, "Can't wait to kiss your neck again," or, "I still remember the perfume you wore the first time I touched you." We weren't trying to impress each other. We were remembering who we were, and choosing to be that version of ourselves again, even if only for a moment. We also started sitting closer on the couch, holding hands while walking to the mailbox, giving real kisses, not just routine pecks. And here's the most beautiful part, the more we acted on passion, the more natural it became again. Some days, life still gets in the way. We get tired, distracted, or grumpy. But we've made an unspoken agreement. We won't let our love run on autopilot. We wake up each day and ask ourselves, what can I do today to make them feel wanted? Because passion isn't lost with age. It's forgotten through routine. And the truth is, no matter how many years pass, it's never too late to wake it up. 4. We created our own traditions. We used to wait for the big things, anniversaries, holidays, vacations, to feel close again. But what I've learned is that Macy doesn't grow in grand gestures. It lives in the small, deliberate choices you make over and over. So we created something just for us. Friday nights. It started simple. One evening, I lit 2 candles, warmed up leftovers, and put on a jazz record. No phones, no distractions. Just us. We sat across from each other like we used to, eyes lingering a little longer than usual, laughter bubbling up from old stories we hadn't told in years. After that night, we made a quiet pact. Every Friday would be ours. Sometimes we danced barefoot in the living room, Sometimes we looked through photo albums and let nostalgia wash over us like a warm tide. One evening, we pulled out our old wedding album and ended up slow dancing in our pajamas, grinning like teenagers. Other Fridays, we cooked a new recipe together, laughing over burnt rice or too much garlic. It wasn't about perfection. It was about presence. Once, we wrote each other letters, sealed them, and agreed to open them a year later. Mine was about how I fell in love with the way he always warmed my side of the bed. His was about the way my eyes still lit up when I talked about books. We cried reading them, not out of sadness, but gratitude. Creating our own traditions made us feel young again, not in body, but in spirit. It gave us something to look forward to, something that was entirely ours in a world that too often felt dictated by doctors' visits and daily aches. These rituals brought a sense of rhythm to our connection. Not forced, not scheduled, just gently anticipated. We didn't need expensive getaways or lavish dates. We just needed consistency. Something sacred. Something small but meaningful. And if you ask me, love doesn't fade, it just needs a place to land. Our traditions became that place. 5. The little things reignited our fire. You know what no one tells you? That after decades together, it's the little things, the tiniest gestures, that light the biggest fires. Not grand vacations or passionate declarations. No, what kept our flame alive were the ordinary moments, done with love. Like the way he'd tuck a blanket around my feet when we sat on the porch. Or the way I'd run my fingers through his hair while he read the paper. Those soft, quiet touches reminded us, we still belong to each other. One afternoon, we went to the park, the same one we used to take the kids to when they were little. I reached out and held his hand without thinking. His hand was rougher than I remembered, older, more fragile. But the way he gently squeezed back, it nearly undid me. We started flirting again. I'd tease him about his stubbornness, and he'd call me trouble like he did when we first met. We laughed more, not because life got easier, but because we let go of needing everything to be perfect. He once surprised me by drawing a little heart in the fogged bathroom mirror after his shower. I left him a lipstick note on the fridge that said, "Meet me at 8, wear that cologne I like." We weren't trying to be young again. We were just choosing joy. Choosing connection. Sometimes he'd leave a flower on my pillow. Sometimes I'd sneak a square of chocolate into his jacket pocket before his morning walk. None of it cost much. But it meant everything. And here's what I realized. The flame doesn't go out because of time. It fades when we stop feeding it. Those little things, they're kindling. They remind your partner, I still see you. I still choose you. We didn't need to be who we were at 25. We just needed to act like people still madly in love at 86. And every smile, every touch, every shared joke, it brought the fire roaring back. 6. We learned to love our bodies again. This was the hardest part, if I'm being honest. When you're young, you don't think twice about being seen, undressing, touching, being touched. But as the years go on, your body changes. Skin softens, things sag, stretch, wrinkle. And if you're not careful, you start to hide. I did. I used to change in the bathroom. I'd pull the blanket up to my chin before he walked in. I'd joke about my knees or the spots on my arms, but underneath the humor was shame. Quiet, constant shame. Then one night, as I stood in front of the mirror, I caught myself looking away, avoiding my own reflection. And I thought, no more. This body carried children. It held grief. It danced and cooked and worked and loved. It was never perfect, even in my 20s, but it was mine. And it deserved more than my judgment. It deserved grace. So I started treating it with kindness. I moisturized slowly. I wore lingerie again, not to impress him, but to remind myself that I could still feel beautiful. And when I showed up differently, something incredible happened. So did he. He touched me with reverence. He kissed my shoulders like they still made his heart race. He told me I was radiant, not despite the years, but because of them. We learned to be tender with each other in a new way. Slower, gentler, more intentional. We explored without pressure. We gave compliments without hesitation. We laughed through the awkward moments. And more than anything, we made peace with the skin we were in. There's a special kind of Macy that comes from being fully known, not just for your beauty, but for your history. When someone has watched your body grow older and still sees it as sacred, that's real passion. The truth is, aging doesn't rob you of sensuality. Fear and shame do. But when you let go of judgment, of yourself, of your partner, you make space for a deeper kind of love. The kind that's earned. The kind that lasts. Conclusion. Now you know my truth. At 86, I don't just feel love. I live it. Not as a memory or something I once had, but as something I actively choose. Every single day. People say passion fades with age, but I found the opposite to be true. It sharpens, deepens, becomes more meaningful. Because now, we don't take a single kiss, touch, or shared laugh for granted. It's not about youth. It's about presence. Too many people let love wither, not because they're old, but because they grow lazy, comfortable, afraid. They stop flirting, stop touching, stop talking. They let silence grow like weeds between them. But love is a garden. It needs tending. If you want deep, soulful, sensual love in your later years, don't wait for it to find you. Go create it. Be bold enough to say what you want. Brave enough to touch. Curious enough to explore. Gentle enough to forgive the years and embrace who you both are now. I won't lie to you. It takes effort. But it's worth it. Because here's what I know. There's no age limit on desire. No expiration date on romance. No rule that says you can't feel wanted, or be wildly in love, after 70, 80, or beyond. I'm living proof. Some days we ache, forget things, or argue over silly stuff. But at the end of the day, we still reach for each other. Sometimes with words, sometimes with just a hand under the covers. And that, to me, is real passion. So if you're wondering whether it's too late to reignite your love, it's not. The fire is still there. You just have to feed it. Start small. Speak kindly. Touch gently. Laugh freely. And above all, choose love again. Because love isn't a moment you remember. It's an action you take. And trust me, you're never too old to begin again.